Greetings everyone, this is Lodrik and this is the game War in the Pacific Admits Edition. I was asked if it's possible to explain a little about how I set up my original turn as a Japanese player and what are the important first steps or choices you have to do, what will have an impact in the long run and also maybe in the short strategic tactical thinking, why I choose it and what other options there may be. And after I did this, I will maybe record all the missing turns at the beginning of the war, because up to now you have only the view of Dojo, and there is 1 month missing for the Japanese side, so that I maybe also can explain what just happened there in that turn, and if I am happy with this or what I did wrong, like this. Okay, so at the beginning, if you want to play by email, you normally have these options, and I think I talked about this again before. But now roughly, because this is something like a starter setup episode, we have here Fog of War. This is more or less a must, or it's only demo game to understand very basic stuff, but this is not for a real match. The weather effect you can activate and deactivate in the game. Normally this is the first option, the allied damage control. This is historical, more or less. And if you activate this, if you want to balance the game, at the same time you can deactivate the reliable US Navy torpedoes. So this is only US Navy torpedoes, and this is all allied damage control. Australian, English, French, everything. So, and if you want to give an advantage for one side, you can activate or deactivate both of this, but in this configuration this is like a balance. So then the player defines the upgrades. I would say this is a I would say yes, this is realistic to have this on. If you have it off, then then you only can upgrade yes or no, and in this case you can choose I want upgrade what type of airplane. Still you are limited to the overall type. An army fighter will keep an army fighter, a navy land-based bomber will keep a navy land-based bomber. You cannot go out of this overall group, but you can choose if you want to have a Betty or want to have a Nell or Francis, like this. And so I would say, of course, if you are the leader of the nation, you are in charge of the upgrade. If you want to have the historical first turn, or if you want to try your own setup, it's up to you. This is really up to you. If you want to have a fresh own controlled war, then I would say the Japanese player choose his actions as turn 1, and the allied player simply only accept this and touch nothing in the first turn, and then you will see what comes. The surprise is I would also say it's like something like how hard you want to do it for the Japanese player. The surprise only increase the chance of hits in the first day with airstrikes. I think original with this active, I think you have always a 100% hit chance. The chance first you check if the pilot more or less is able to find the target, then to hit the target, and then and out of this hit, what is the consequence? And this simply only gives it the first day a big boost that you have much more hits. But how strong the hit is the other question. And the realistic R&D is option for the Japanese player to move more easily between production and R&D. Normally it is locked. You have at the beginning of the game certain factories for R&D, and these tools will run R&D, and if the R&D is finished, they change to production. At that day, you can still choose they start with the production, or you can change them to R&D. But once the tool is in production and it's a real factory, the factory can never go back to R&D. And if you have this off, you normally can switch always between. You can make a factory to R&D, and you can make R&D to factory. This is the only stuff that's really changed. And this option is normally a big benefit for the Americans if it's on, because the Americans, they have much more units will withdraw. So if you have active this, it means all units keep in the game. They never will change to the European theta. So normally this is and you can balance out of this. And at the end, this is now a slight advantage for the Japanese player, I would say. Not overcritical, but of course I can choose my own upgrades, and I have the choice to change my factories and R&D tools. But on the other side is the Americans, they are simply an advantage. I don't know how much, but I would say that the American side is maybe 2/3 power, and the Japanese have only 1/3 power in the long run. So but these are the important tools or choices you must do at the beginning of the game. If you are the Japanese go always first, so the Japanese choose the setup. And this is only the game options. This is nothing. You can always change this, and I think the only thing what you must change in the first turn is this. You cannot change, I think, more the cycle. So you start with 1 day per turn, 2 days per turn, or 3 days per turn. And I would simply say the 1 day per turn is more easy to control. The 2 turn is what Dojo asks is you can faster progress in the war and still have a control over your units. And the 3-day turn is simply nearly impossible to control more. It's very hard. The game simply missing some options for this. But you can try. But I would say 1 turn or 2 turn. 1 turn is better if you are new to the game, because then you can always interact and see something's wrong, and then you change it immediately. In the 2 turn already, if you make a mistake, then it's very easy that you will really pay for this. Okay. And the preference is only sound, I think, and nothing really more important. And most of the stuff you can still change. Okay, this is only the options. And now we select a... Okay. The scenarios, there are some more you can normally download, but this is, I think, the basic scenarios. Most player... If you want to learn first some stuff, some battle stuff, I would say play the Corel C. It's a small map, or Guadalcanal is also okay. This teach you how to use Navy and Air Force, but this will not teach you so much logistic stuff. And then you have still this scenario 1 and scenario 2. The scenario 2 is simply the Japanese have a little better logistic stuff and little more supplies, I think. I never tried it. Or you have the option to go for December 8. Means here you have no surprise more, because it's the day after surprise. I can only say, so far I know, there was some updates to the game, and the last updates, they more or less, they focus only for this campaign 001. So here they fix some problems, and this problems are not fixed in this 002, and they are also not fixed in this December 8 stuff. Small detail stuff, I don't know exactly what all, but I know there's some difference. So if you choose the official beta patch, would they say this, unofficial beta patch, there's also a lot of mods and other modifications, so I don't talk about this. Good, then we start with the scenario. They say, yeah, start the game. Oh wait, I must really check through that. Ah yeah, play by email. Select the scenario. Select scenario 1. Say yes. Then you must only use a password. It doesn't matter. You can also change this later. So this is player 1. And then you start with this map. This is the beginning of the game. It's December 7th, the day after the strike on Pearl Harbor. If you do the strike on Pearl Harbor, it's up to you. But okay, now let's talk about the situation. The Japanese more or less just declare already war on the Americans. So you don't must do anything for this. You will be at war with everyone the next day. Even if you don't attack, you're at war. So there's no choice to delay anything. And then you normally have the split of the game with the Japanese. Okay, let's compare this. What is the big difference between a Japanese player and the Allies player? The Allies player starts weak but gets stronger day by day. The Japanese, they start strong, but compared to the Americans, they get not more much additional forces. They get additional forces, but at the beginning, yeah, but it's compared to the Allies much less. So this means the time is running against the Japanese. From the point of units first. The next problem is with Japan compared to Allies. The Allies, they get supplies and oil, fuel, more or less unlimited. The west coast of America produce stuff you get from this offset bases, Arden, Abadan, and Captown, and all this other stuff. They simply produce a lot of stuff, and it's always enough. The Americans, they only must organize to ship it. You must ship it from the offset bases and from the west coast of America to the locations where you need it. In India, in Australia, and all those islands. So it is more or less for the Allies only logistic transportation. Simply, I mean, it's not maybe that there's nothing behind this, but you only have to organize the transportation stuff. Okay. For the Japanese, it is normally more or less the same. I would first say, yes, you also must ship your logistic. I mean, you must organize your logistic. You must ship the supplies and the fuel to the bases where you need it. Similar or the same like the Americans. You can say the distance is shorter because you are here in Japan and you maybe must ship it to Singapore, and you must ship from Singapore back to Japan. The distance is not so big, but let's say you at the end you must always ship and organize stuff. This is equal. The big difference is more or less that you must also organize to bring the crude oil and the resources to the facilities to produce fuel and to produce supplies. So the Americans, they have a one way. They get everything, they only ship it to the front line and then consume it. The Japanese, they must first gather, drill, and collect resources, bring this to the main industry centers. There, these resources will be the exchange or consumed, and then you produce out of this some stuff like fuel and supplies. And the next step is then bring this stuff to the front lines. So the Americans also have some stuff of this, but normally you can ignore it with the American or with the Allied player, because the stuff what you produce is compared to the stuff you get from the offset bases. Simply, you get enough from the offset bases that you can ignore the rest. You can use it, but you don't must use it. And then with the Japanese players, there's really simply, you must organize this. You need the input to Japan, the resources. You must consume these resources and then ship it to the front line. If you not care this topic early on, you will run in very, very seriously problems very soon. Roughly, I would say, if you don't bring any resources to the mainlands of Japan, so this islands, this is you can always check this. You can see here is the railway, and there's a railway connection, then it's also linked, or at least there must be a road. You can see here is this southern island is connected. They are all connected up to here, but here's no connection. Here is no connection, but there's a main road. So this part is still like one island, but this island is not more part of Japan mainland. So you can bring everything to one harbor here, and it will automatically flow in all the bases here between. And if a base needs something, then it will normally flow. But everything what you produce here, you must bring to the mainland. Everything what you produce here in the north part, you must bring back to the island. Everything from Korea, Manchukuo, China, resources, bring to Japan. This is the stuff. If you don't do this, I mean, this let's say simple, and you bring really nothing to Japan, no resources and no crude oil, I think the first stuff you maybe run out is the resources. But also the crude oil is not for unlimited time. I think at least a half year, maybe you have enough backup resources in Japan for a half year non-stop production. But latest after 1 year, I think you would be completely dry. And then in that moment, you don't have no resources, no resources, no crude oil, then you also have soon no fuel and no supplies more. And then all your army and air force and navy is dead in the water or sitting ducks and cannot take off more, and no army will operate more. Then you are dead. If you cannot organize the supply lines, you will simply die. You not even lost a battle, but you lost the logistic war. So I can only say it is equally important to organize the management of supply and resources equally to what you do with your army forces. The army forces, you will see the battles and you have some fun with this and you enjoy this all, and it will be painful or it will be a joy. In the logistic you normally see nothing. You only see that something is not working, and then you will say, shit, I make a mistake. And you must always keep simply this in check. Every turn you must check if there's any base have a failure or malfunction. You can check, so industry, have everything active, and then you have a failure. And then if there's any failure, it will normally plop up. But this means already at that moment there is already the failure, so a factory will not produce more. So you're already losing stuff. So you normally must find out there will be a problem and catch it early on. And this is really a big difference, and it's a burden to the Japanese player to keep this in mind and in check. And if you can ignore it, I tell you, you can ignore it the first half year and maybe even the first year. You can be fine and say, if you only want to learn the game, you maybe must not try too much with this. And you only play if both agree with this, is that you and also agree that roughly after 1 year you will be dead. Then do this. But if you really want to try this and fight to the end, you cannot ignore this. So this is the first really big difference between a Japanese and an Allied player. The other big difference is the Japanese reinforcement of Navy units are very limited. If a Japanese player, the Japanese player, they get in all the war 2 battleships, I think 5 light cruisers, and maybe 6 main carriers and 8 or 10 support carriers, something like this. So you can get a dozen or 2 dozens of destroyers and also submarines, and a lot of smaller equipment, but you must compare this to the Allies. They get 5 times more. So if you cannot if the kill ratio is 1-to-1, then you will lose the game very quickly. If you play the Japanese player, you normally, I think at least you need a kill ratio of 1-to-2 or 1-to-3, and it's everything what you lost you will miss later on. I only want to tell this, there is no way around this. If you lost 4 heavy cruisers, then you have 4 heavy cruisers less all the rest of the game in the war. There's nothing coming for this. If the Allies lost something, so far I know, if the Allies lost light and heavy cruisers, after 12 months or after 18 months, they get a replacement for this. So it's not that they get it overnight, but they simply get it back after some time, and they have much more battleships. They're getting more stuff. They have, ladies in mid of 43, the production output of carriers are like every month 1 carrier, boing, and the support carriers every month 2 or 3 of them. So if your Allies can hold the line up to summer of 43, and the Japanese player was successful up to that moment, the clock is running painfully against the Japanese. Okay, so I want to only say, if you are the Japanese player, think twice what you're doing with your units. But always keep in mind, you cannot win the war if you only stay and hold something. With a Japanese player, you must conquer, you must try to get the engagement in the battle, but you also must always try to fight a battle you can win easily. That you don't suffer much, but you can hurt the enemy. This is very easy to say, but it's simply like this. Okay, this is also a big difference. And the third big difference between the Allies and the Japanese is what we said before, is the combination out of R&D and production. If we go to industry and we go for, we can normally only activate heavy industry, and for size, the heavy industry produce supplies. The supplies you need for everything, more or less, army, navy, everything, ammunition, reinforcement, replacement, repair, all consume supplies, and also heavy industry points. You can see that we have here now heavy industry points, 50,000 heavy industry points in backup, and we're producing every day, I think every day, 14,000 heavy industry points. You can keep it like this and only conquer bases and to get additional heavy industry points. But in supplies, but I simply would say it's not enough. I would say you better upgrade some stuff here. The question is how much you want to upgrade. If you upgrade something, you pay with heavy industry points and supplies. So, like, I mean, it's always an investment. You invest for something, and first, like, roughly after 1 year, you get first a benefit out of this. So with a Japanese player, and this is a question of the tactical and strategic. If you invest heavily in this heavy industry part, you pay first a lot of supplies in stuff from the start on. You're missing. Means the period of time you have an easygoing time because you have enough stuff is shortened. But on the other side, you will have later on not so hard to fight to get enough supplies, and you can maybe run all your army and the navy on a more active level. If you would not increase your heavy industry production, there's only a little dangerous. Many people say don't try to increase the heavy industry production too fast, too much. Because everything what you get is only supplies and heavy industry points of it. It's nothing what you can fight. And it needs really time. And also keep in mind, you can increase all your heavy industry, but every heavy industry also required resources and fuel. And in this game, you can not only increase facilities, but you cannot increase production output. You cannot. I can do this here with the resources. This is fixed. If you go for this base, then we go here for resources. You can see there is no. You can firstly not stop the production is always online. You can only say repair, but you cannot increase the production. Don't ask me why, the game simply don't allow you. So you are simply a little limited with your heavy industry maximum capacity. All this industry will not help you if you cannot feed it. And this is also why I would say you can increase your heavy industry output at the beginning of the game, but I would not go too crazy. So, and what is not too crazy, let's say, I think I bring the Tokyo up to 2900 and the Osaka to 2000 and all this I think to 400. In Japan this is all managed, or the Japanese main islands. So maybe add here 500. I think 500 additional heavy industry in Japan is first not too much. And I would also say you better increase it in many bases a little, because you can only build one factory per day. So it means these factories are faster ready to produce. If you upgrade Tokyo for 500, you need 500 days. But you pay at day 1 500 points already. If you want to do it like this. You can also go every day and say one more. But this is micromanagement. Okay. This is about the heavy industry stuff. And because we are fighting or talking about heavy industry, I would also say light industry don't need anything. You take the light industry, what you get. You can repair everything what you get and conquer, but you never normally must increase it. The cost is simply too high to increase light industry output. Yeah, light industry need no oil, but it's simply compared to heavy industry not a good deal. So forget light industry. Some people say even don't repair light industry because the repair cost is simply too high. You will not get normally the cost for repair ever back. I would say no, this is gamey. I repair everything, but it's up to the user. So, and if you want to increase the refineries, I would say no. I really don't have the experience that you will have a problem with this. Normally you have the problem that you don't get enough crude oil. Most of time you have, or maybe more the problem, you have at a base somewhere, or maybe in China, or maybe somewhere else here in Borneo later, you have here the crude oil, and then you must only bring the crude oil back to Japan. But if you can organize to bring the crude oil to Japan, then in Japan there's normally enough capacity to change this crude oil to fuel. So I would normally not invest in this, but I would always repair. Later, if you get the game starts here with Miri, with oil 150 is ready and 150 is damaged. And the refinery is also 150 is damaged and 150 is ready. So you need 150 days to get this base ready for full operation. So, and there are more bases. Depending how lucky you can take some stuff, it's more or less damaged or not damaged. So you normally don't must build more, you can simply conquer it. And you must conquer it because without this additional oil, you will not survive the war for a long time. Japan has the capacity to extract the crude oil and make out of this fuel. The capacities are here in Tokyo and Osaka. There's always a big facility. I think each have 200. You can check here also. Yeah, Tokyo, Osaka have also a refinery size of 200. And you have additional, not so big, but still nice to have. But they consume or they require a lot of crude oil. You have here in pool 3.2 million crude oil. But this oil is really, I think, if you don't bring crude oil here, I think latest after 1 year he has nothing more. Even less, I think. So, yeah, okay. And this is about so normally heavy industry, yeah, increase, but not too much, and maybe maximum 400, 500, I would say. Other question is, this counts for Japan. The other question is maybe why not increase the heavy industry in mainland China? The logic behind this is if you have all this industry here, you produce the supplies here. But you don't need the supplies in Japan, you need the supplies in China. So you bring resources to Japan from China, exchange them, and then bring back the supplies to China. Yes, you can do this. But why not produce the supplies in China itself? So that you have here, like Shanghai, you can say, okay, I double the output in Shanghai, I double the output here in Beijing. Beijing is very small, but and all what is mainland China, so also Manchukuo, Korea, you can check the bases where you can find heavy industry, you can increase it, your Canton, Guangzhou, and why not? I would simply say it saves logistic. Here is crude oil, here is refineries, and so it's in the long run it's a benefit for you. You because if you transport stuff from A to B, you still need cargo shipping. The cargo ships will use fuel, and cargo ships can get damaged. Then you need supplies to fix them. And cargo ships always have the risk to get sunk by submarines or anything else. So I would simply say at the beginning it's simply you don't have enough industry to support all your armies and your air force, so you must ship supplies. But after a half year or 1 year, maybe you have increased the output of supplies that you don't must ship more so many task forces. So it gets less and less and less, and maybe there's maybe a point that you say, okay, now I can bring the supply somewhere else. Okay, this is only first the economy, because before you start everything else, you must understand this economy part of the game for the Japanese player. And this is also why I say, if you're new to the game, and everyone else, or nearly everyone, say don't play the Japanese first, always play the American first. If you play the Americans first, you learn how to ship stuff, you know how to fight, you know how to organize reinforcements for unit and all this stuff, and then you know already 90 or 80% of the game. And after you understand all of this, you go to the Japanese, and then you learn the next level of logistic. Then you learn running industry. And the last part, maybe not the last part, but the next big part is R&D. The Americans, they don't have this. The Americans get every unit fixed. The quantity, the quality, everything is more or less fixed. You only must pick it up and then bring it to the location where you need it. So you have still to organize stuff, but you don't must think about I want this, how many I want of them. You simply get them, and if you use them, it's up to you. If you use all or half, you can not ask for more. It's more simple. When it's a Japanese, it's simply not so simple. It is always more complicated. Okay. R&D in the interlink. Okay. The game simply say there are engines and there are airframes. There are two different industry. There's an engine industry, and there is the airframe industry. And you need a combination out of this to get an airplane. Because there are not so many different engines, the Japanese player has the R&D and the production in one link, or one line, or whatever, one sheet. So you can see here, everything what is golden is production, and everything what is gray is R&D. Means this engine is not ready for production, you still must develop this. And the game starts with this configuration. And then it's up to the player how he wants to change it. Okay. You can... Okay, the other basic rule I must say first. R&D tools or factories or labs, they have a cap of 30. Every lab tool is over 30 will not give you additional R&D bonus. The game here, you can see here we have already a lab tool of 40 and of 80. This is just simply the game start with this. You cannot change it. But if you have the choice, don't go over 30 with R&D. So you like this, we can now say we want to have additional R&D tools. Then I say, okay, 5 more. Then I say, give me 10 more. Oops. I think it's not working because we have no supply, so pity. Okay. But here we can say, give me 10 additional. Then we would be at 30. Because this is damage and this is ready, so this damage will change to ready, and at the end it can be up to 30. This is the maximum. And this is a engine. Over 30 you don't need to go for R&D. For industry production you can of course increase it, because once the unit is the R&D is over, you can produce here 1000 if you want. This is always production per month. Also keep this in mind. So you produce this engine 60 per month, not per day. Okay. This for the R&D. You don't go over 30. This is the same rule for engines and also for aircraft designs. So 30 is simply the maximum. Everything else is waste. The next rule is R&D will only be ready if there's nothing damaged. So this facility, 40 are ready, nothing is damaged. It will produce R&D points. You can see R&D is now 0%. And this is something like simply like luck. There's always a check if the tool will have a success. If it's success, you get 1% R&D. And every tool simply will check every turn if it has a success, yes or no. The chance of a success is small, but if you have enough tool power, you get R&D points. And if you have enough R&D points and you reach the 100%, the 100% drops back to 0. And at the same time, it will lower the time. It will not start more with October 42. If this is successful with 100%, it drops to September 42. And then it starts again. And then it can go down to August or July, whatever is possible. But if something is R&D tool is only one factory is still damaged, like here we can see now 5 are ready, 5 are not ready, you will not get any chance for R&D bonus. First, this 5 must change to be ready. If this is then at the end a 10 to 0, like here, then you will have 10 factories ready to produce R&D. And simply the game say, and if you have 30, so this means you have now your 40 and 80, but the game just count only up to 30 tools. You can have your 40, but the game will only make a check with maximum 30. It checks 30 times, yes or no, and then they say, okay, over. This factory have no bonus more. Then it checks the 80, 30 times. The first 30 get a check, and then the last 50, no check. Keep this in mind. Okay, this is R&D for engines. And then the question is if you need all engines, yes or no. It's really up to the player. I would simply say you don't need all tools. These 2 engines, I would immediately stop production. You don't need them. They are old engines. So 31, the 32, 33, 34, 35, you need all. The 34 maybe not so much, but you need a lot of 35. You also need a lot of other stuff. This 32 to 35 you need all. You need also normally the 43 and the 45. The 42 and the 44, the turbojet and the rocket jet, they are very special. Only very limited numbers of airplanes really use this. This is often high-end stuff, end war stuff. It's most of the time you will not reach this, so you can kick it out and use it for something else. You can always touch it and say I want something else. And because you have now this and then you can change here simply what you want. Oh, I want only check because I really don't know more. We have now realistic R&D is off. Okay. Okay. So keep in mind R&D tool maximum 30. And if you want the engine, yes or no, you must check the airplanes you want produce. And then check what engine this airplane consumed. Most of the fighters, they use the H-35, and the endgame fighters, they use the H-45. So 35 first and 45 later. And a lot of bombers, they're using the 32, 33, and I think there are later some endgame bombers, they're using the 43. But this you can really check by yourself. I also recommend that you use the tracker software, because in the tracker software you can compare always airplanes. I can do this later again. I did this already all, but because this is now new setup stuff, so I repeat my information maybe. Okay, you don't must do this all at the first turn, but if you early start with this, you get faster your bonus out of it. This is the air production. So the air production, they have a slot for only production and only for R&D. So but engines is not so many, so they put it together. It's the game. This is now the production. You can see there's now everything's online, nothing is damaged. But you can also see that here are some factories with 0. So there's a factory but with 0 output. So you can choose. The game, this is a game. In the game you cannot create new factories. You only have this given factories, and then you can change the numbers. This is why you have this factory with 0. You can now do something with this factory, but you can never start a new factory. So this you also must keep in mind. Then you produce a lot of these fighters and airplanes. And then you must think about if you want really produce them, yes or no. Maybe if we check the tracker, then we can talk about the airplanes, if it makes sense to produce them, yes or no. I simply would, at the beginning already say, I don't need the Topsy, I don't need Thalia, Sony, Lily, Ida, Nate. No, I would always say I don't need this stuff. Why? I can explain the other day, but I would simply already start immediately say, kick it out. I don't need this. This is all outdated stuff. And then you have also R&D. You start here, similar to the engines. There is this, I don't know if it's a historical setup, but there's this game setup. And simply check what airplanes you like and what airplanes you think you don't need, and then you can increase the factory stuff. Keep in mind also, don't go over 30, and it's fine. A&D chain, I can talk another day, because you need a tracker for this. You will not see it here, but I will keep it like this first. Important is the Japanese player normally, if you don't care this, the Japanese player can simply say, I don't care ND, then you keep this like it is, and you keep the engine like it is. You don't touch here anything, it's okay. The ND stuff, the gray stuff. Then you will get the ND stuff more or less with the historical date. Then you only say, okay, and then I care the production. You can switch on the production, you can switch off the production, you can go for this, and then you say, I want production, yes or no. Simply go yes or no. No way. Nothing complicated. And also with the engine or with the airplanes, yes or no. Production, yes or no. The only stuff why you have this R&D is if you follow the historical path, the Americans will be latest and somehow 43 outclass all Japanese airplanes you have. Like in reality, it's simply like this. The Japanese Air Force had the peak of the power at the beginning of the war for the first 6 months, and somehow 42, the airplane technology was, I would say, equal. In the end of 42, the Americans start to outclass the Japanese, and latest in the summer of 43, the Japanese Air Force had barely any chance to be really successful more. If the balance of power is equal, the numbers, let's say, then the Americans will win. Even if you have high skilled pilots, I mean, if we compare similar skilled pilots, similar numbers, the Americans have simply the technology. This is why the Japanese player better try his best to get out of this R&D the most benefits. But more we can discuss later. So this is the next part, what the Japanese must active normally do. He not only must manage resources, he must not only manage heavy industry, he also must manage R&D, he must also say how many airplanes he want, and if he wants stop the production, yes or no. It's much more micromanagement. Okay. And we not even start with anything else. This is only basic stuff you must understand. And I don't know if there's something more about this. I would say this is first enough about the basics between ally player and the Japanese. There's one more stuff, but it's now inactive because we cannot touch the buttons in the first turn. In the second turn I will explain this. The Japanese player also has the ability to change the speed of production for his ships. There's only 3 options. You can stop the production, you can make normal production, or you can make increased production. For every ship, but only for ships now. What you cannot do is add ships. You cannot say, because now you get 2 Yamato battleships. There is no way in the game that you say, I want 2 additional Yamatos. No. The list of ships is fixed at turn 1, and the Japanese player only can choose, I want this ship faster, and I don't need this ship, stop it. And of course you can say, I want everything faster, but this will simply overload the industry capacity of Japan. And because of this, or to simulate this, you have this navy shipyard points, and this is a merchant shipyard points. They're simply like, this is all like cruisers, destroyers, submarines, everything what is military stuff is here, and everything what is support or cargo stuff, oilers, patrol, I think is also here. This is this kind of pool. And then you can see that you have a pool production, you produce points, 800 points for this merchant shipping and 1,384 for the navy shippers, and these are the points. And these points more or less you pay for a ship to build. And if you, let's say, the Yamato, you want to produce with normal speed, ask simply every turn 100 points. And if you say, Yamato, I want you faster build, then the Yamato will say, okay, you want me faster? Then I ask or request 200 points per turn, per day. So you pay more, you get the ship faster. But it's not like you pay double to get the ship in the half the time. It's not like this. It's all like in reality. If you want something faster, you pay a lot more to get a small boost. Similar in this game, you pay more or less double points for 25% or 30% faster construction time. Roughly. I never really calculate this, but you have also not the choice between fast, super fast and turbo fast. There's only fast, normal or stop. And at turn 2 you can start with this. You can say, okay, check the list and then what ship you really want faster. You cannot choose too many. And most of the time you also must say, okay, I want something faster, then I also must stop something. And you do this best in turn 2, because once you did this, you don't touch this more so often. Maybe once per month you can check it, but you can also ignore it and say everything is normal production, but you have at least the choices. You have the choice is to say, I want the Yamato battleships faster, but I don't care the light cruisers, or I don't need submarines, I want more destroyers, like this. Okay, this is, I think, really the last part, but it's really big difference between because Allies players, they don't have this. They only get everything fixed, no option to change it. And the last big difference, and it's then the beginning of the setup of the units, and then I would say I stop at first, is the Manchukuo question. If you check the info button, you have this Manchukuo garrison request, and you need 8,000 assault strength in Manchukuo at any time to stop or keep the Soviets out of the war. If you drop less than 8,000, there's simply the check. Less than 8,000, check. If the check is positive, nothing will change. If the check is negative, the Soviets will enter the war. Simple. So you must keep your garrison always over 8,000 if you want to keep the Soviets out of the war. Maybe there's a reason why you want the Soviets enter the war and be free. And this more or less starts the first question. I must keep 8,000, but every unit over 8,000 is waste. So, means at the start of the war I can take 3,450 assault power out of Manchukuo to fight in China without any consequence. Simple. Okay? The next question is, what units I want to take out of Manchukuo to fight in China? And then where is Manchukuo? So this is Manchukuo, and here is the border of Manchukuo. This is border, because here is the Soviets already. This is Mongolia, but this is the border between China and Manchukuo. Here is also the border from Korea. But I think the game say that Korea and Manchukuo is one. So the units in Korea also count to the garrison. So if you take the units out of Korea, you also lose Manchukuo garrison. Or more or less, it makes no sense to normally to keep. I mean, I really not try it, but so far I really know that Manchukuo in Korea is like once. And if it's not like once, it makes even more or makes even less sense to keep anything in Korea, because it is not linked. You of course you want it in Manchukuo or in China, but you don't need anything in Korea. There's never anything happen in Korea. Or I mean, if the Soviets are active, then something will happen in Korea, but then you did a mistake normally. And I think there's also not really a garrison request in Korea itself. No. So here you can take all what you can find in Korea, you can take out and use it. So, and what I will take out of Korea, out of Manchukuo, okay, keep in mind that the game say it must be assault power or strength. That means more or less units like this is the division, the 11th division, they have an assault strength of roughly 400. You take this 400 out to China, then you lose the 400 points here. Then it will be roughly 11,000 points to 8,000. But this also means everything have no assault value, like this unit. Don't care. The game have no calculation for this. So if you want, you can take everything out of Manchukuo would have no assault strength, and still the number here will never change. Because most of the anti-aircraft stuff, like this units, and oh no, not here, and most of the artillery, they don't have assault strength because they are not. They're always only support units. They not engage directly the anti-aircraft stuff only just support your units if the enemy is making an airstrike against you. So the enemy will have a lower efficiency in his airstrike and maybe gets damaged airplanes or lost even airplanes. This is anti-aircraft. And the artillery stuff is normally always for bombardment. They soften up the enemy. Yeah, I would say this is the main task of them. You can make a real bombardment attack, then only artillery will attack. You make a standard attack, then the artillery also will first attack before the charge of the infantry. And if you make a shock attack, I think the artillery will always strike after the normal battle. I think it was like this. So, but artillery is normally most of the time not so important. It still can help, but it's not so a must-have. Okay, only to think about this. You have here a lot of stuff with no assault value, so normally you can bring them all out. If you won't bring them all out, it's up to you. Because you can say this is a little gamey if you take all out and then compromise. What I do is more or less I say no, I don't take everything out with the zero assault value. I simply only take it out if it's part of the army I want to take out. And this works like this, that you can simply go to this is the overall command of Manchukuo, the Kwantung army. You can take this guy out because he gives you a lot of support power. And support power is more or less helpful for get your units, gets faster, new equipment, replacement, heal, morale, all of this stuff. They just take care that your guys are ready to fight. You can go for ground. Then you can see what everything is linked to this overall HQ. Then you order this. Maybe make it twice. I think it doesn't matter. And then you can go for this HQ stuff. You can see these are all the HQs linked to this Kwantung army. You have here one air army. These are combat units. They have a range of 1. So they are like 3-star generals. And this is a army. This is Corps and this is an army. This is a 3-star general and this is a 4-star general. And that guy, the overall guy, is more like a 5-star general. If you touch now the Korean army, then you are here now 4-star. You can see the radius is 5. You can also see that the support is a little less than the 5-star guy. And then you can do this again. You can touch now this guy. Then you see what belongs all to this 4-star guy. You can see these units are all attached to this Korean army. And I would simply go like this way. I would say I choose armies, complete army units, all everything, and then I take this all out of this area. And only to make it clear, not all is possible to move. You have here 1, 2, 3, 4 fort installations. They're all forts, so they cannot move, they're static. So this you will never get out. But all the rest you can move out. And then you can see there's this is anti-aircraft stuff. You have some artillery stuff, and more artillery, and more and more and more. You can see some have an assault value, and some have nothing. You can see these are pioneers. The game says they're engineers, but normally they are pioneers. Because if an engineer have an assault value, then they're not engineers and they are pioneers. Means they are fighting units. They can construct stuff, but their main ability is normally to destroy buildings. So if you use this in the combat, in the war, in the battle, these units are normally always trying, before everything happened, to infiltrate the enemy line and destroy enemy fort. And if they are successful and they can destroy enemy fort before the battle starts, your units will suffer less. So they are normally very important. The only downside is, because they try this, they always suffer high losses, and most of time they are the first guys they break. But you cannot change it. It's simply their task to be the hero of the day and cross the line and blow something up, and try not to blow up themselves. But I would simply say, okay, now you have all this Korean army, and then you move. You try to catch all this Korean army guys. I think they're starting here. Here's the headquarters. It's because they don't start at the same location. You can see they're all around the area. You must pick them up, and then you best bring them to one city. I would always choose this city because this is the last city in Manchukuo. You can bring everything here, and then you cross the border, and then you can see how the points changing if you make something wrong with the calculation. And then I always move the whole army together in one hex, because the HQ will give the bonus to everything what is connected to this guys. So every unit is part of this Korean army will get a bonus from this Korean headquarters. So of course I want that they stay together. And so you can choose now the Korean army to go out, and then you can choose some other army to go out, and then simply you will soon see that then you have enough points took out. So this is always a way you can say, give me all the HQs, and then you can say, maybe say, okay, I want also the 20th army, and you touch them, say ground. And then you see what belongs all to this unit. You must always say, okay, oops, they are static. So these units will keep here, but the rest you can move out. Then you can count up the numbers, and then you get a feeling how much you can move out. And all your support equipment you take with them. And then I would say it's not gamey because you want this army out. If you plunder all the other stuff from the armies you keep here, then the army is still here, but they're missing all the supply equipment. This will never happen in reality. Yeah, and this is, I think, what is first enough to understand what is a little special, because this Manchukuo rule is only Manchukuo. And I would only suggest, because I suggested, always take this army. This is his air army. It's an air HQ, but an army HQ. And this unit, because this is not a ground arm, it's not good ground HQ, it's an air HQ, it's only have a aircraft connected to them. And this unit is it's special because there's only this one at the beginning of the game. And to explain this, I can just simply say this bomber is part of the second air. Yeah, here they call it second air, and then what air? This is the second air division. Don't ask me why they don't write this here, but this second air is this air division. It's a game. Nothing is perfect, and there's also some stuff in this game not perfect. So this second is now still a part of the Kwantung army and is restricted. So it's restricted to Manchukuo. So if I try to bring this unit out of Manchukuo, like I won't fly to this city, it say, no, you cannot go there because you are restricted. Oh, shitty. I cannot use them. Active in duty. I mean, I can bring them here now to the border, and then I can fly missions out, but I cannot base them out. Okay? Oops. Okay, then they have the option. Okay, say, no, I want this unit in China. Okay, I touch this and say, oh, I don't want to be more part of the second air wing. I want something in China or somewhere else. Oh wait, no, I forgot. How is normally then you must find the HQs in China, but I think there's also the option. You can always, I think, link it to General Defense. China Expedition. Yeah, here's this is the China Air Force, more or less. It's not arrived up to now, but I think you can link it now to this unit, and then you can move it to China. Let's try this. First, you won't do this. You have a new HQ. You start with 500 points, and you won't change this, then you must pay 108 points. And then you can normally move this unit out, because then it's a part of this Chinese air squadron. You can do this, but I would say no, it's waste. Because this is not only this unit, this is not only this HQ, this counts for every HQ. Before you won't take out this, because you say, okay, I want this unit. Okay. You can see it's golden. Golden means you can change it. But there's always the option, or you must always say, okay, I want this unit, and I see I can buy it out. But if it's possible to buy the HQ out, it's always a question. If you want a unit, then always ask, or first always make check if it's possible to get the HQ out. Because now we go to the HQ, and then we see, oh, this HQ is also golden, but it's restricted. I cannot move out now of Manchukuo, but I can say, it is restricted, but it's possible to buy out. What happened if I buy this unit out? And then I say, I want to have this unit enter the Chinese Expedition Army. Then it costs me 70 points. And automatically this HQ have all these units linked. And now you can make a calculation and say, what is better? You buy each of these units out, or I buy the HQ out. So simply say, of course, it's much better to buy the HQ out. So if we do this now, we bring this to the Chinese Expedition Army and say, yes, I pay the 70 points. We can see it's changed. Now it's restricted to the Chinese Expedition Army. We have not more 500 points, we have only 430 because we pay the points. We go to the same bomber. We tell them guy now, okay, we are still part of the 2nd division, and then you can see now it's changed, and now it's not more restricted. And now we can say, okay, we try again, fly here, everything's the same, and now it's changing, because now it's not more restricted to Manchukuo. And there's only this one HQ in Manchukuo, so I would always say this is the first thing you buy out, because it simply gives you a lot of more air power in China. But then this is really the last stuff is, you cannot get all of your air squadron out, because not every air squadron is linked to this HQ. There are still some, and most of them are fighters. Let me check. Here, like this. This fighter is part of the 2nd Air Army. And then now it's the 2nd Air Army and not the 2nd Air Division. And you can see they are strictly restricted. Or I don't know why it's a S and Air, but for me this is something like strict restricted. Means they are white. You can touch it, but nothing will happen. It's not possible to get them out. In this unit, if I try to bring them out, restricted. You can only move them in Manchukuo area, or everywhere where this 2nd Army restricted belongs to. But I think it's all Manchukuo and Korea. So Manchukuo and Korea is enough, and we can check it. Normally you can touch the base, and then you can see all the bases where you can go. And I can see here Port Arthur. This is Port Arthur is Manchukuo. Here is KO. This is Seoul today, so it's Korea. And we can see there's only this. This is all Manchukuo in Korea. You cannot fly to Japan, you cannot fly to China. So you will have here some of these fighters left in Manchukuo, and because you will keep some of these fighters simply here, you use them for training only, and this also means that you cannot take all of your base forces and not all of your engineers out of Manchukuo, because you need some with aviation support. If you don't have these guys in the base, you can normally not run airplanes for a long time, or they break down simply. They are responsible for maintenance. You need aviation support to run airplanes. You can always check this. You check the airbase. Oh, no. You check this, the base information, and then you can see there's an aviation support in the space of 84, and you have a requirement of 6 to have a maximum maintenance efficiency. This 6 is simply based on these 6 airplanes are here. And this 6 is based again on the number of airplanes multiplied with aircraft data. And here's the service rating. So because this is simply a simple, but this is more or less related to the engine. But you can always check this. So some airplanes, if you have 2 engines, let's find this quickly. This is a bomber, and this has a service rating of 2 because there are 2 engines. A 2-engine bomber, you can see here 2 engines, 2. So each engine needs maintenance, so here the service rating is higher. And this will simply only and this will normally have an impact on the maintenance time. But I think now you cannot see this because if I touch it, yeah, then everything is 0. But if the airplane have higher service time or service value, it's more complicated to maintenance. Means it's the tendency to break down is higher. It means you need, if you run airplanes with high service value, you must make sure that you always have this aviation support requirement. Like now you can see we have only 21 support for aviation, but we normally need 33. And then normally these airplanes with higher service value break down much faster. And if they won't break down, it need more time to repair. Okay, and I think this is now only to explain why don't take all engineers and all aviation support out of Manchukuo, because some airplanes you cannot get out here, and it will be waste not to use them for training. And how to use training and all this stuff we can explain in the next video. So I think these are really the first. And we not touch any combat unit at all. I only try to explain the difference between an Allied player and a Japanese player, and why it is really much more tough to play the Japanese. Now I say thank you, bye bye, and see you next time.